Thank you so much for tuning in today. You are listening to Society Bites Radio. My name is Jillian Beth. I am an intuitive healer and coach on a mission to empower women by reconnecting them to their inner wisdom. And I'm so grateful to have you here with us today. And I'm excited for today's show. This is a guest we haven't had on before, and she does some really cool things that I don't think we've ever talked about on the show before either. So definitely, you're going to love this conversation. Stay tuned next week as well, because she's going to be coming back to talk about transformation through truth. And I want to welcome the beautiful Chiara. A little bit about her. She is a seeker, a learner, a researcher, a clinical hypnotherapist, certified nutritional consultant, animal communicator, trauma and life transitions advisor. She has studied many modalities and offers an eclectic approach in her practice. She believes the process of becoming is far from an easy path, and yet it is one that is deeply rooted in the human experience. She is a melange of the intuitive and the scientific. Her goal is to build a bridge that supports the understanding of the self whilst grounding it in the best practice. She supports her clients through life-changing events by reconnecting them to their soul essence. She calls this transformation through truth. Her clients experience significant change that is tangible and is reflected in their daily lives and relationships. Her clients have dubbed her office as the sanctuary. Ooh, that's nice. A safe container that allows them to rebuild and reconnect to their inner lives through trust. So welcome, Chiara.
Hi, Jillian. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, yes. I am really excited for this conversation. We spoke a little bit before. We were connected through a mutual, wonderful acquaintance. And I don't think I've ever had anybody on here to talk about animals and their minds. So the title of today's show is Animal Minds, Emotions, and Communication. And you have some amazing gifts. So I would love to start with just letting or talking to the audience a little bit about animal minds and emotions and what you do.
Oh, thank you. Yes, animals are profound beings. They have their own, what I call their own reality. So, a lot of times when we look at animals in the traditional sense, we look at them from a behavioral perspective and we equate their behavior to their sense of being. But from my experience, animals really share quite a number of things that we as humans share. They have the depth of emotions. They have an internal reality which is very, it is similar, but it's also very different to ours. And the way I want to explain that, if I may, is when they do feel, they feel very deeply. And the way that they connect to people, each other, and their environment is through their nervous system, fully and absolutely. So for them, a loud noise, for example, is amplified much, much more than it would be for us because we live in our heads, generally speaking. They live in their bodies, in their environment, and they're very attuned to what's going on in that environment. So from an internal reality perspective, their beingness and their essence is very, very deep.
You know, it doesn't surprise me that you've said that. I've thought that before. And part of what's coming up as you're talking about this, I'm wondering if maybe part of the reason that that happens is because they're so in the moment. Like, yes, they have heightened senses, and I've always found like animals know. Recently I was around one puppy that I'm close to, and I was upset, and as soon as I started getting upset, she came over to me. But I'm just curious from your perspective, if it's because they're so aware and in the moment, that everything is amplified.
Yes, they're very much in the present moment. When we talk about trauma, for example, when trauma is stored, it's actually a psychosomatic experience, and it is so for animals as well. But for them, they don't live in that. If they're triggered and there is an association, that will come up. But they don't live there permanently. They live with what's happening day to day, moment to moment, second to second, because it's really that is their greatest gift as animals, teaching us to be present, to be in our hearts, most especially in the domestic animals, is to really be in our hearts, so that we can move forward from that space. They truly are very remarkable. They are great healers. They're also
Yeah.
great sensors, and they're very much in tune with you or their owners. And as you mentioned, they pick up things very, very quickly.
Yeah. I remember working for an individual years back, and he was I'm going to use nice words like high strung and very direct and always on edge. And he had this beautiful German Shepherd, the sweetest girl, and she was quite sick. And I often thought, this has to be somewhat related to just his constant energy, because I even jokingly said to him a few times, like, I can't keep working this closely with you because you're shortening my life. Like, it's just, there's so much tense energy. And so to even think about that being even more amplified for an animal is sad in that sense. But they do bring us so much joy. And I think there's been, I'm sure, multiple studies done that, people who have pets often live longer. And that has to be through the compassion and love and joy that they bring us.
Yes, I mean, they come from a purity of essence. And we see that a lot in dogs. Cats tend to be more mysterious and independent.
Mm-hmm.
And cats, in my experience, bring a lot of feline wisdom with them. And dogs really are about the heart. They really are about supporting us to open our hearts. And, it's interesting that you mentioned that the dog was sick. And you're right. I would not put it past the dog that the dog was taking on as much as they possibly could to support their human. I have an example that I'd like to share, if I may.
Please, yes.
There was a beautiful older Dutch hound that I had a communication with, and the lady who owned him was a friend of mine, and she was ill and she was going to have a surgery, but he wasn't faring too well, and she had called me to come in personally and ask him, would he be okay? Is he ready to pass?
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that he was supporting her healing. And I asked him if it was possible for him to wait a little while, if felt he could do that, so that his human could have her surgery, and then she would be able to um, come away from that and not have to deal with him leaving her as well.
Right.
So we had a conversation, and as I always say, I don't tell animals what to do. We dialogue. It really is a gestalt. And they have their own internal realities, and they have choice. They should have choice. They should have self-agency. And he said he'd think about it, and he did. He waited until it was the right time, and after 3 months she had had her surgery, she had recovered, and he began to show that he was ready to move on. So it's very, very beautiful, and I treat it very much as a sacred experience. And when I do sessions, whether or not it's in person or online or even remotely, I do a report sometimes if they're far away. It really is a sacred moment that is created between me, the animal, and the human. It's very, very beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know I mentioned it in your bio about you being an animal communicator, but I'm glad you brought up that story because I think it is a wonderful gift that you have. And it's incredible that you're able to put into words the things that we may not always realize because of the way that you're able to communicate with them. I believe you also just recently did a communication with gorillas in Rwanda.
I did. I asked on my Facebook page. I regularly ask if people would like me to talk about something, and this had come up a long time ago, but it was Gorilla Day a while ago, and so I thought, okay,
I didn't know there was a
let's do it.
gorilla day. This is
Yes,
amazing.
it was a long time ago, and I said, okay, I'm going to do a communication with the gorillas, but the wild ones have their own timing, and that's another thing that's very important for animal communication. A lot of animals, especially dogs, will ask me, can we do it at the full moon? Because when we
Interesting.
talk to animals, they don't know time and they don't know money. But they do understand the time of day changes, and so we go by the moons.
Yes.
And so with the gorillas, it turned out that I had to wait 3 months later until they were ready to have me. And because it's such a sacred practice, everything is in flow. One can't force this type of thing.
Hmm.
And the more one forces that, then the less we're able to connect. And that's one thing that I like to teach people. But yes, I did. It was amazing to literally put myself to that location and just wait for them to notice me and for them to come to me, which is how I work. Generally speaking, is I always wait for the animal to come to me, regardless of where I am.
It's like I'm thinking, and I'm picturing you kind of in this um, scenario, and it's like you showing up and then allowing them the okay to proceed forward because, like you said, it is incredibly sacred, and it also makes me smile a little bit having talked a lot about the feminine and also masculine. That it seems to be that animals and not surprisingly so, even when we see the birds flying in the sky and how they fly together, and it's so beautiful that they really are in a flow. And you saying, with the moon, well, the feminine is very much in tune with the moon.
Yes, and it's interesting that you bring that up because during the gorilla communication, the experience with the silverback was very, very different to the communication experience for me with the females in the group. So he approached me first and he wanted to test me basically and took me away from the group. It was a protection for them as well, and he wanted to test who I was. At the same time, I needed to prove myself. And I've done this before with the wild orcas. I had to eat a fish, for example.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
did ask them, I said, please don't bring me a seal. I don't think I can do that. Um, so on this occasion with the gorillas, going back to that story, they eat nettles and they fold them in a very specific way. And I thought to myself, I honor you, but I really don't want to do this the wrong way because having nettles going down my esophagus, I don't think I can take that, even if that's on a different plane, because
Right.
I'm in a different trance state when I'm doing these sessions. You still have the physical experience, at least for me. The more you
Yeah.
do this, the more you become one with it. So um, thankfully, we went past that and we had some grass, which I'm happy about. But once he
That
was
goes down
happy
a
with
little
that,
easier.
yes, once he was happy with that, he brought me back